How's it now?
You're good. You're good. We were talking about the difference between medium mail and EDM a little bit, and then we talked a little bit about hybrid farming is kind of my approach, and your approach is more farming. So that's just kind of where we were at.
Sounds good. You want me to take over?
Yep.
Okay. You guys can see my screen. I can see that you can see my screen. Okay. Thanks for bearing with me. We got everybody in the room still. Who's in the back right there beside
Yeah.
Christian?
Hey, David, it's Steph. I'm covering the desk,
Oh,
so I'm popping in and out.
okay, cool.
Can't see everybody.
All right. So little class here. I had the opportunity to do this in Allentown last week, so that was exciting to share with them. So obviously wanted to make sure we're sharing with you as well. So wanted to talk about our real estate journey centered around every door direct mail. And the takeaway I think on this is that I'm not here to say that every door direct mail is the best thing for each of you to do. It's just the thing that worked for me and for Karen and I. But it's important to have a thing, right? So your thing could be door knocking like Dan Witt, or it could be social media like Nicole DeBoyne. But I think most things will work if you see them through. In the beginning, Aaron was hustling, door to door, right? And that was working for him. And now it's calling and working the database. So it's hard to have a passion around a bunch of different things, but if you just pick one or maybe two things and set them, I think you'll see dividends. But our story, we got started in August of 2015. So we're right about 10 and a half years. Sold roughly 950 homes in that amount of time. So averaging just shy of 100 a year, about 300 million in closed volume. And a lot of that is attributed to Zillow in the early days and direct mail ever since. And the reason for that is some of you know the story. Karen and I both worked at Verizon at the same time that we got into real estate. So for the period of 2015 to 2019, this was a dual career for us. So we strategically chose to work with sellers versus buyers because sellers require less in-person time. A seller you can go over, have a good solid listing appointment, in an hour, three if you're Chris Brad, and hopefully get the listing, and then you can service that listing behind the scenes, schedule your photos, work through the MLS, work through contracts and offers, and to the point where you may settle on that house and never have to be in their presence again, right? Sometimes they pre-sign with a notary. Ideally, you have a send off and give them a gift and thank them or whatever, but the face-to-face time with that seller is under 2 hours throughout the entire listing versus buyers. They call you and they want to see a house when they want to see it. And that could be night, weekend. They could look at two and buy one. They could look at 22 and never buy one. So, you can't control your time as much with the buyers. But so if I look at that timeline, so I first got my license in 1999. You guys can see and hear me?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
So I first got my license in 99 and I didn't do much with it. I was with a company called Jack On back then. I think my stint in real estate lasted maybe 6 months. I think I sold one house and I had like two referrals that actually closed after I left. But at that time, I wasn't, serious about it. I was living, in a bedroom in my parents' house, right? Hard to be credible as a real estate agent. But what it did is it gave us the talk track later on when Karen and I formed a team and we were new to the real estate market in Palmyra in 2015. People commonly said, well, where'd you guys come from? How long have you been doing this? And I was actually able to answer that question and say, oh, well, I first got my license in 1999. Karen and I just formed a team here recently in the Palmyra area. And that was enough to get people past that. So I often talk about not being a new agent. Sometimes you have no choice, but people do ask you that question and they ask you just because like they feel like they should. If as long as you give them one confident answer, you can kind of get past that. Like, if I'm Steph Gray, I said, oh, well, I've been doing this since, earlier in 2025. I've sold, a handful of houses, but I've been active in real estate, owning my own home and, helping my family and friends for quite some time, right? Like as long as you give them an answer that instills confidence, you can move right past it. But that became critical for us to have credibility. But I started working in Verizon I guess in 2005 is what the slide says. And I worked there all the way through 2019. And if you see the overlap, we started real estate in 2015. So for 4 years, I was dual career myself, Karen for 3 years. And just some other dates there, 2018, 2008, we purchased our first rental. So that was before we got involved in real estate. I became kind of a passion. 2013, got married, formed the real estate team in 2015. And there's a reason I'm going through this. 2016 was our first year in business. We sold 21 houses our first year, and the vast majority of those were listings. Second year, 2016, we sold 57 houses, bought another rental. We built our house in 2016 as well, and we built our house brand new, paid just under 400,000 for it. We only put 5% down. We didn't have much money, right? We scraped to get into that, so we had a loan of like 370,000 on the house. And I'll get back to that. 2018, third year in business, we had kind of a little explosion in business. We did 101 sales that year, and it was late that year, I think in the fall, that I was actually in the real estate commission in Harrisburg getting my associate broker's license, because at that point I had a vision to open like an independent brokerage, kind of like Iron Valley type of thing. Obviously never did that, went the KW path instead. But I was standing in the real estate commission getting my broker's license. Karen called me all upset saying, oh my gosh, I think I'm really in trouble. I missed another important call. And the balance there was she was the face-to-face for most of our real estate. She was showing the houses. If we had showings, she was going to settlements, doing stuff while working a Verizon job, because my Verizon job, my job at that time, I was a territory manager for Verizon Fios, and my territory was Virginia Beach the whole way to Boston. So I was on the road 5 days a week. So she was the physical presence, and I did most of the paperwork and everything behind the scenes. But anyhow, she was in hot water because she had missed the call, and they knew that she was involved in real estate, and they knew that that was kind of the passion or came first. And I said, well, hey, why don't you just give them your notice? And she was like, really? I was like, we had kind of talked about it. But I was, I'm the money person in the household. So I was kind of watching our journey, 21 houses, 57 houses, 100, trying to figure out where I was comfortable walking away from our jobs, because we had good paying jobs with benefits, health insurance, 401k, and so forth. So we chose to do it in a staggered fashion, where she left first in 2019. It paid off, right? We went from 101 sales to 148. And then in the middle of 2019, I actually resigned from Verizon, I think in June or July. And then a couple months later, they had a severance package that I would have gotten. And then a couple months after that, COVID happened, and I would have worked from home for a couple of years. But anyhow, you can't look back. And then 2022, 136 sales. So rather similar years, 2019 into 2022. And then that's when I became the OP of Keller Williams. So you will see a decline there in business. We kind of strategically stopped working with buyers, stopped on some of the Zillow leads. Sales dropped to 98 and then to 77. And then last year, we obviously brought on Aaron, and he's been crucial in helping to get that buyer business back. And we jumped back up to 100 sales, and now we're north of 900. And then in 2022, I have in here paid off house. And the reason I say that is this whole journey was a journey of sustainability for me. It's like, okay, at what point are we comfortable leaving our jobs? And when we had a mortgage and we had 2 kids and we have, a fairly expensive lifestyle, right? We like nicer things, like to go out to eat, like to go on nice vacations, things like that. It was a hard decision to make. So from the very beginning, like literally the first sale, every time I had a settlement, I put $1,000 when I got the check from Keller Williams, one of the principal of our house. So it took from 2015 until 2022, and we were able to pay off our house. And that's just an example of paying yourself first, right? Like I would argue whether it's $100 from each sale to go into a vacation savings, or the $1,000 principal to the house, or whatever you're saving for. If you do that, provided you have a decent amount of cash flow, if you do that in the very beginning, it becomes a number that you don't even have to question. Like I never even got that $1,000. It just went into, I did get it, right? I got it. And then as soon as I did it, I just went on, and some months I made 5 extra payments. Some months I made 10 extra payments onto my house. The mortgage company probably thought we're nuts. But I just did it as soon as we got that payment because I wanted to not lose track of it or have to go back and double up later. But I think that's a good way to save if you have the cash flow to put money aside and not think about it. So getting into the sources of business. So early days, we did four things: the mailers, and that was I did a lot of research as we were getting our licenses on how to brand ourselves. If you know our story, Karen went to Anvil Cleona High School. When I met her, she lived in Lebanon. I went to Bowling Springs and lived in Carlisle. So Palmyra was, kind of in the middle. Karen had cousins that went to Palmyra school, but we didn't know anybody in Palmyra. Chris Rattle laughed at this, but in the beginning, actually, we had an argument about this recently. In the beginning, I didn't know the difference between 322 and 422. I would leave the house and go to an appointment. I'd be like, Karen, which one is it? Like the one on the right or the one on the left? And because I didn't know my way around, I would navigate to addresses and stuff. So for us, it was about how do we build a brand or credibility in a place where we don't have a sphere, like we don't have classmates, we don't have employees, we don't have employers or coworkers. And for the most part, I kept my real estate career secret. Like I didn't have any social media presence. I didn't have LinkedIn at that time. The job that I had, it wouldn't have been viewed as acceptable to be building a business on the side. So I couldn't get anybody, I couldn't even really talk openly about real estate. So we had to say, how can we market ourselves? And in the research that I did about top of mind awareness, talked about you just have to become the real estate agent that people think of when it comes time to transact, right? It's very difficult to get in front of somebody at the time that they're ready to transact. Some of the lead generation programs like Zillow and stuff do that for you, that probably if I'm on Zillow looking at a house, I might be interested in buying one, but then you have your own challenges with them with pre-approval and other agents and things. But the mailers allowed me to be a constant reminder that we're a credible option for a real estate agent when the time is right. We did a lot of Zillow in the beginning. So there was a time I was honestly spending $8,000-9,000 a month on Zillow because it worked and it was cheap at that time. It was about $95 a lead. Today it's $600 a lead. It was easier when it was a buyer's market, when there's inventory on the shelves. The last few years when stuff is flying like hotcakes and you're paying, 5-6 times a lead just to find out that that person calling you has an agent but didn't want to bother their agent because it's Sunday, or they're calling about a house that had a deadline last night and it's already sold. It's harder to build rapport today. Open houses. So we were in a unique situation where we had Karen's kids every other weekend. So the weekends we didn't have those, we tried to plan to do more real estate stuff then. So we would divide and do an open house each on Sundays every other week. So essentially for a month, which is what any of you could do if you did it each Sunday, which I don't recommend. Probably take at least a week break. But we were selling 11 to 14 houses a year based on open houses. And that's with a pretty low key strategy. Like we didn't take their information and stalk them afterwards and try to get them to work with us. It was just by being super outgoing hosts. And we would commonly have people look us up afterwards saying, hey, look, I met you at an open house. I don't have a realtor yet. Would you be interested in working with me? Actually, Karen had one of those just 2 or 3 weeks ago that Aaron now has signed under a buyer agency that they just said, oh, we liked your approach. You're very easy to talk to. You know the area. And then her and Aaron had a call with them, and I think they're at a 550 price point. So what's that, Aaron?
Not really, but yeah.
Oh, lower?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, whatever. So open houses for the return on investment, like for you to do an open house Sunday from 1 to 3, you obviously have to get up, get showered, get prepared, print stuff. So you're probably going to dedicate like 11:30 to 3:30 for that open house. But for that 4 hours that you're investing, if you do the math and you say I'm going to do 3 a month, that's 12 hours a month, 180 hours a year to get 10, 12 sales. Like you're making some pretty serious money on that time that you invested. Plus, you can pick the geography of the open house, and you can strategically do it in your farm area or places that you want to grow your business. And then client events. From the very beginning, we've done an annual pie giveaway. We do an annual client appreciation gala, similar to our awards banquet at the brokerage. Things like that, just to stay in touch with our past clients. I was always envious of, like, if you think of the marketplace, at least where I am, there's old school names like Joan May and Dave Drobnock and Judy Stover. that just seem to get business just because they've been around for 20, 30 years, right? And I was spending a ton of money doing all this stuff at the top of this, and we never got a single easy sale, right? It wasn't like, hey, I'm your neighbor, I went to school with you or whatever. So we had to market for every single sale that we did, where eventually I saw that start to turn around. It didn't take as long as I thought initially, but after like probably 4 years, people, you start to get the first phone call for, hey, we outgrew the house, or we're relocating, or unfortunately we're getting divorced, or whatever it may be. And you're like, oh my gosh, it's actually starting to work. I'm getting business from my past clients, and I'm also getting referred by my past clients. But the key of that is to not lose touch with them. Most of our customers leave the settlement table with a great feeling, thinking they would use us again. I think across the country, the statistic is like 86% when they're polled say they would use their realtor again, but very few do, because there's so much time that goes by from that settlement till the time that they transact again, that they meet other people, they forget about you, you lose touch with them. So with our events, we invite anybody that's ever transacted with us. So all 950 people, usually times two, right? So we're inviting 1,000 or two people to get a free pie at Thanksgiving time, or to come to our gala or our carnival or whatever event we do. And the point there is that when we invite them, they feel that we add value, whether or not they can come. Obviously, if they can come, they get to spend some face-to-face time with us, and we renew our standing with them and stay top of mind with that customer that already knows, likes, and trusts us. So current day, that's kind of evolved a little bit. We still do the events. So if you look at the database category, we do the events. We do touch plans where we send emails or videos 2 or 3 times a month to about 12,000 people at this point. And then social media, just making sure that we're active there, sharing our listings, sharing some community events. Even things like one of my best videos was Chick-fil-A being announced in Palmyra, right? Like, so, like people, when you bring news to them that they're not seeing anywhere else, or you put your spin on it, you're adding value in that local community. Referrals, we're getting more and more business from referrals and repeat customers, and we're still doing the mailers. So at this point, if you live in my target farm area, you've gotten mailers for 10 years from us. So you've probably gotten about 150 postcards from me at this point. So, and that's where obviously I have an advantage, because I've done it for longer than anybody else at this point, and we do it more regularly. But that's the top of mind part, where we were sitting literally at Texas Roadhouse last Wednesday at the bar because the wait was too long. We only had 45 minutes. And this woman and her daughter leaned over and said, "Where do I recognize you guys from?" And I hesitated for a second. She's like, "You're the one that sends the mailers out. You're the realtors, right?" And it was literally this stranger. And she lives in an affluent neighborhood in Palmyra. And that, seeing my physical presence and Karen's, on top of the mailer effort, on top of the fact that we live in the same community, I could very well have just secured a future customer out of that. Or her daughter said, "Oh, I'm going to buy a house in the next year or two." So I think that it makes us very highly relevant in a small area, because the same area that we're mailing to, they're seeing us at the grocery store, they're seeing us at the sporting events, they're seeing us at restaurants. So like, it reinforces that effort, and makes it a little bit easier. Plus, we're automatically more knowledgeable on the community, the neighborhoods, the streets. I mean, some houses we've sold twice at this point, right? So it's easy for us to speak to that. Anybody have any questions so far? Want to take a chug of Red Bull? All right, so getting into our strategy. So I talked earlier about everyone should have like the one thing that makes them passionate, right? So these are some of the people that I watch. Dan Witt is in the bottom right-hand corner. Adrian knows him well. Is Adrian still here? No?
No, you left.
Okay, so Dan is the door knocking guy. So Dan goes out door knocking 5 days a week, every day for like 3 hours in Allentown, and he's selling 100 houses a year with literally no expense except for paper and ink cartridges. So now I would never do that. A lot of people probably wouldn't want to do that, but that's his thing. And actually, he was at my training last week, and he's shifting his to mailers, right? He's going to mail to the same place he's been door knocking, because his kids are older, they're more active in sports, and he just, at the age of 40 or 45, he just doesn't want to knock on doors anymore. But that's what gave him that 5-year head start on everybody else, where now he's credible and he can probably dial back and ultimately never knock on a door again, and follow it up with the mailers. So I think that's a good idea for him. top right corner is Will Van Winkler. He does the golden letters. So he sends out thousands of mailers a month saying, I have a buyer for your home. And then he has a separate phone number they call. And when they call him, he may or may not, usually may not have a buyer for the home, but he talks his way into basically a listing appointment. He's like, let me preview it on behalf of my buyer funnel and my team and my brokerage's buyer funnel. But then when he's there, he has a knack for converting that to a listing appointment. And he's, making $1 million a year at age 23 or 4 at this point. The guy at the middle is the speed tour guy you're probably familiar with off of YouTube or TikTok. The guy with the tattoos is literally known as the tattooed realtor. He has tie-dyed, spray-painted graffiti-like billboards all over his city. I think it's Minnesota or Minneapolis. And he's getting quite a following that way. And then on the left-hand side, honestly, up-and-coming competition for me is Nicole DuBois. She moved here from New Mexico about 5 years ago, sold 5 or 6 houses her first year, sold 10 or 15 the second year. And now she's selling 25 to 35 houses a year just off her social media. You could tell she's a transplant here as well. I don't think her husband is wildly connected, but her reviews and her, it references. We met Nicole on TikTok. We met her through social media. She lives up to her hype on her videos. Like, you can tell that she's literally pulling the business from social media, but she's made it her one thing, right? So almost every day she's getting up, getting her makeup done, getting her outfits on, going and filming content, and then going home and editing it, right? So this is just here to say that anything can work as long as you're passionate about it, and you keep with it. So I don't want to say that mailers are the only way. Somebody have a question or thought? Amy, so since you have a unique perspective, Amy worked with Nicole for a brief period. Can you confirm that she gets a lot of her business from social media?
Yes, that is correct. She does all of her stuff on social media. She was a Milton Hershey house parent, and then kind of branched off from that, kind of digging into the parents there, trying to find houses. And then she works with a guy that is her coach from New Jersey, and has really coached her on how to do all the social media.
Okay, I didn't know the Milton Hershey piece.
I heard
Who are you talking about?
Nicole.
Oh,
Yeah, she's with Nicole Banker.
okay.
And we'll get into mailers in just a second. So I had just a couple other helpful tips. There's real opportunity in this business, right? I was just talking to my buddy in Allentown, and he's struggling a little bit with his ice cream business. And I said, listen, if you want to, he has his real estate license. He sold probably 10 houses. I said, you could go out and sell a house a month fairly easily if you pick one of these things, right? And if you did that, you can make $8,000 or $10,000 a month with very little effort, right? And I know this room, we have some very high performers in there. But that's why with Robin's training last week, with running your business like a business, having a separate LLC, having a budget, having expenses, and reinvesting in your business, right? Some of us are like, I don't want to spend $500 to have a happy hour for my past clients. Well, it's not that. You should already have that money kind of divided off. You should have a certain percentage, 15, 20%, whatever it is, that you're going to reinvest back into marketing, right? And there should be almost like categories of that, where some of it's marketing for new customers and some of it is to stay in touch with our past customers. Don't be a new realtor. No one wants one of those. So I cringe when our new agents are like, I just got my real estate license. I think you're taking away your credibility, where why would I call the person that just got licensed? I wouldn't want to do business with the attorney that passed the bar yesterday necessarily, right? It's probably not the best feel. People are going to pay us $10,000 to buy or sell a home. I think on average, we put in less than 20 hours on a deal, right? So if you divide 10,000 by 20 hours, that's $500 an hour. We're getting paid anesthesiologists, right, to do this job. That so there's that's about as high as the wages go in this area to make $500 an hour. Now it's hard to rinse and repeat and get the next customer, but that opportunity is worth $500 an hour. Almost any strategy will work if you stick with it. We covered that. And then there's 2 paths to success in real estate: marketing and prospecting, right? So marketing, the next slide. I said we're going to talk about marketing today because we're too lazy to prospect. A little bit of a joke, kind of, not really. And marketing is where you're going to spend money to get the phone to ring, right? The left side is the side that I have adopted, right? So I spend a lot of money to get the phone to ring, and that takes less time than it does the prospect. It reaches more people. It has less impact for the people it reaches because it's not as personalized, but it's scalable. You can do that to 100 people, 1,000 people, or to as many people as you want, right? So marketing is inbound strategies. I'm making the phone ring. Versus Aaron is right now, he's a little bit of a hybrid, right? Because he's benefiting from some of our left side, but Aaron himself, new to the business and working our database on the right side, where he's spending less money, spending more time, like 9 to 12 every day, contacting people. He's reaching less people, but he's having more impactful conversations with those people. And it's not quite as scalable, but there's no right way, wrong way. It's just my way. We're going to talk about marketing versus prospecting. So top of mind awareness, the actual definition is that it refers to a brand or specific product being the first in customers' mind when they're thinking about that industry or category, right? So the 4 steps of top of mind awareness are number 4 is the worst, right? They don't know who you are. They're unaware of you as a brand. The next one is they recognize you. The next one is they recall you. And then the next one is top of mind, where, people fall in love with the house down the street and they're like, oh my gosh, we're gonna need a realtor to make this happen. Who should we call? Let's call David and Karen, or let's call that couple from the postcards, or, that's where top of mind, comes into play. And how is it achieved? Through consistent branding, effective marketing, and superior customer experience. So if there's any of you that doesn't have your own Google page or Zillow page or somewhere that you're directing people to for reviews, that would be a big miss, right? So a decent chunk of our business up until recently has come from our reputation by way of Google reviews, right? So, and we have 261 reviews right now, which is actually more than Joy Daniels. So we have the most in the marketplace, and that automatically gives us credibility. If somebody Googles us based on our postcard or our listing or whatever it may be, and they see 261 and 5 stars next to it, that's enough for most people to make that phone call. They might read through a couple reviews just to see what people are saying. But a lot of people in the marketplace have started focusing on that. So I'm seeing other agents pop up in the 3 figures with reviews. But we had an early start to that where people were calling us saying, oh my gosh, you have 100 reviews. Nobody else has more than 20. But that's just my whole approach here is kind of a shotgun approach. So it's centered around mailing, but there's other things that support the mailings as well. So direct mail itself, this is a quote from Jeremy Bowers, who is the team leader of KW Empower, which has 1,100 agents in Philadelphia. And he just posted this the day I did the training in Allentown. And he talked about how during COVID, him and his wife stepped up and started doing more with direct mail because they noticed that because of the rising postal costs, that there's less junk mail in the mailbox. And it is expensive. What's the first class stamp these days? Like 74 cents-ish, right? So between a stamp and printing, you're spending about $1 per household. And that's nothing to spend to mail to somebody that already knows, likes, and trusts you. But to mail to a stranger, that's pretty expensive because there's no guaranteed interaction or return there. But from my perspective, the key with direct mail is that the customer has no choice. It will be in their hands at some moment, even if only for a second. So my mail, when I get it out of the mailbox, I walk into the garage. We have our dumpster there, and the junk mail never makes it inside my house, but it is in my hands for a second, right? If I'm seeing the same thing over and over again as I'm filing it to the dumpster, I at least take notice of that for a second. And that's why it's key to be regular, and it's key to be oversized where, it sticks out. Like if I was in this person's mailbox, I would want to be the vehicle ad or the large one here, because these other ones can get lost in the shuffle, especially if you come out on a day like that the newspaper coupon thing is there, or the Valpak or the Clipper magazine. Sometimes you get lost in the shuffle a little bit. So looking at actual every door direct mail. So EDDM stands for every door direct mail. What that means, the postal service is all about sorting and the amount of machine time and human labor it takes to get something from the post office to the person's house. So the most expensive rate you pay is when I mail something direct to somebody else. If I say I want this to go to Chris Radicek at his address in Palmyra, that's going to be the first class, the 74-cent stamp or whatever it may be, because that's intensive for them. They had to get it from me, sort it specifically to him, and drop it off to him, right? There's a lot of energy required there. When you do every door direct mail, you're getting the cheapest rate that you could possibly get from the post office, unless you're a huge national company or nonprofit. But that's because you're going to every door on a mailman's route. So I have no choice. In this example, I'm looking at 17050, which is Mechanicsburg. And if you look at a route, let's look at this. And I'll show you guys live here in a second. But what's going to happen is they don't sort my mail. It actually never even goes inside the post office, to my knowledge. So the printer takes it to the dock behind the post office. It already has the route's name, like 17078R4, right, is the specific mail person. It goes in their passenger seat. And as they're delivering the mail, they have everybody's rubber banded or whatever by house. Just every single house that they pull up to, they grab one of mine off the passenger seat, put it with the rest of the stack, and put it in the mailbox, right? So there's no thought, there's no energy, there's no sorting. So because of that, and because of the scale that we're participating with, they're doing it for less than half price. It's 33 cents per door instead of 74 or 75 cents. So let me show you that here. So if I go to USPS.com, which is United States Postal Service.com. This is their homepage. If I wanted to see the Every Door Direct Mail, it's under Business. So the Business tab right here, and you go to Every Door Direct Mail, and this pulls up a map widget. So if I wanted to look at 17112, for example, Linglestown or Lower Paxton, I guess it is, I can put in the zip code and hit search. I can also put in a specific address if I want like a radius around a certain point. But right now, we'll just do the whole zip code. And if we said, hey, we're seeing a lot of non-KW signs around the office, which is annoying when a different agent lists a home near the office, how can we make an effort to start mailing to those people to try to get them to use Keller Williams instead? Someone's going to have to help me here with the map, probably Kim. Like, how do I find the office? Bluebird, Belmont. Keep going left.
No,
No,
you
you went too
need to
far.
go the other way.
81.
Zoom in,
Yeah, zoom in. We
okay,
can't.
zoom in again.
Lock Willow. Okay.
Yeah.
So here we go. This is a good example. So this route that I'm hovered on right now, it would include the office. Right here's the office, right? This is the hotel. So I could choose that route. And that route would go to one postal carrier, and there's 597 houses on it. It would cost me $147 each time I mail to them, not including printing, right? But then I probably am more intrigued by this route here. I think this is generically where like Sherry Heilig and Tyler used to live. So like that route, and now I might even want to do this route, right? But I literally have no choice. If I do these three routes, if I wanted to stay on this side of 81, well, one of these routes takes me across 81, right? So to get those houses there right behind the office on Blanchester, Kingston, and Claremont, I literally have to advertise across 81 and go over here into Pleasant Hills and stuff as well. But that's just the drawback of doing, this 33 cent every door direct mail. But let's say I wanted to do those three routes. I'm going to be sending 1,667 pieces. I take that back. I go here under residential and do residential routes only. It excludes the businesses, right? So I'm going to save 120 doors by doing that and a little bit of money. So I'm going to mail to 1,547 houses at a cost of $382 per mailing. And it's going to go to every single person. The printer I use, which is Get It Now Print, they used to be on Dairy Street. They just moved to somewhere else. Terry?
Yeah.
Okay. What I do with them is I mail them the front and back of the postcard I want to mail and the mailing routes, and I never see it and I never touch it. And a couple days later, they say it's been dropped off at the post office and it goes to the houses usually that same day or the very next morning. I'll get into the math on that in a minute, but you can also go in here let me see. If I go here from map If I change it to table, I can see the routes I have selected, right? So those 3 routes include 17112. C7 is the route, C27, and C99. And just for your own knowledge, a C route is a driving route, so a mailman in a car. No, I'm sorry, opposite that. A C route is a walking route, commercial, and an R route is a rural route, which means it's a driving mailman. But anyhow, I'm going to go to those 3 that have the check marks. I can't get them all on the screen at once, but you get the idea. And it shows you how many houses are there. It shows you the average age, the size of the household, the average income. I don't really put a whole lot of thought into those. I just look at, in my case, I'm mailing to the whole town, right? So I don't put any thought into it. But if I wanted to pick a specific couple routes, I'm going to mail probably in the area that includes where I live. I'm going to mail in the area that includes like high turnover, meaning like 5, 10, 15-year-old townhouses maybe, or single family neighborhoods in that like 250 to 400 price point that may be upsizing. I want to go after turnover, right? Because this is a guerrilla warfare approach. You want to get this thing into the hands of the people that are going to transact potentially with you. There's some streets that just don't make sense, right? Probably Elm Street here in Hershey doesn't make sense because they don't turn over much, and when they do, they all go to Sally Copeland. Like so. There's areas in Palmyra like that are harder to turn over or slower to turn over. At the same time, I kind of avoid like the main streets or the commercial districts, or for obvious reasons like the trailer parks and apartment complexes. Although apartment complexes would be a great one to mail to if you had a buyer strategy, right? Which is my strategy is a listing strategy. Anybody have any questions on the platform? I usually get some questions here, but USPS.com, business, every door direct mail. Kim, what's your home address?
1712 Breckenridge Drive.
So if we did it this way by house, we can see Kim's Palace here in a second. So just as an example here, are you right off of St. Thomas Boulevard?
Yep.
Okay, so your house should be this one. Does that look familiar?
Yep.
So Kim's mailman or mailwoman, if I click on that route, he or she delivers to 593 homes every day except for Sunday. $146 to mail to them. And actually Kim's looks like a great opportunity because it's literally going to hit every house in her neighborhood and then a couple other neighborhoods nearby. This is one of the most concise routes I've seen. The only kind of random overflow you're going to get is down here, which may or may not be helpful. Carrollton Drive, they might be townhouses, Kim.
No, I think their house is on Carlton.
Okay, so Kim,
Okay.
for $146 could mail to 600 homes and speak about Linglestown and the local market and the fact that she lives there and recently sold a home in the neighborhood. And for her, almost everybody that's receiving that is a relevant recipient, right? Sometimes you see some crossover where I'm gonna get some overflow. Like I mail to a neighborhood called Rockledge in Palmyra. I have them on lookout in case Chris Rad starts mailing there. They're going to tell me. But there's some overflow. There's about 560 homes in that neighborhood, but the mailman also delivers across the streets. You can see here, this is the neighborhood. These couple streets over here are totally different. These are $500,000 single family houses. The townhouses over here are $250,000 or $300,000 townhouses. I mail to Rockledge speaking about Rockledge, and these other people get it, right? It's not the best scenario, but it's cheaper for me to do that than it is to mail first class just to these Rockledge people. Now, there is a hybrid that Michael talked about, the media mail, that makes more sense now that I started doing, but sometimes you just have overflow and you're going to speak to the majority, right? Like if the majority is townhomes, then maybe you speak about, outgrowing your home. Let's help you upsize your home this year in 2026 or whatever. Maybe it's not relevant for everybody, but it's relevant for the masses.
Hey, David.
Yeah.
So do you only have Rockledge selected there? Isn't that's the overflow, those other two routes?
I have one route selected, but it goes to Wheatstone as well.
So what do you do is if you want to send something out to Rockledge specifically, and like a Rockledge mailer, how do you approach that? Cause you don't want Rockledge mailers going to the whatever Wheatstone community.
Yeah, so now I'm doing media mail, but before I was just doing it and they're getting Rockledge stuff. Actually, it worked one time that somebody in Wheatstone owned a Rockledge home that their daughter lived in, and they called us to sell it, right? So some of that, like I said, I think, also I could do a two-prong approach, right? Part of the postcard could speak to Rockledge and part of it could speak to Wheatstone. Like, so you just have to be aware of that like if you have two different segments within the mailing route, but you're going to have that. So like what I do for the most part is I'm mailing to most of the town, right? So that's where when it talked about on that chart where the impact of the conversation that Aaron has is going to be more valuable than my touch, obviously, because Aaron's literally talking to them one-on-one where I'm sending them a mailer. But the more zoomed out I get, if I mail to the whole town, I have to be much more generic than if I mail to one mailing route. Like Kim can talk about, I'm your neighbor, I live here. Whereas all I can say is we share the town, right? So it does work better in a smaller area, to the point where a few years ago I started doing mailers for specific, kind of like the golden letter, where we had buyers looking for like two people were looking for a townhouse, one was looking for a ranch home to downsize into. And I went into the tax records and I looked at all the Palmyra ranches and I started mailing them. We have buyers for your home, and people would call us. Now, I didn't really master that tact at the time about saying, okay, well, it doesn't work for this buyer, let's just sell it anyhow. But it just goes to show you that the more specific you are with your approach, the more it resonates. But guess what? I'm mailing to 9,700 homes every 2 or 3 weeks right now. Nobody can call 9,700 people every 2 or 3 weeks. Like, that's not possible. You wouldn't have the time. You wouldn't connect with them. So it allows me to have a bigger scope, but with less impact, but it still works out when it's all said and done. So that's why, I started this by saying it's not the approach for everybody. But any questions on this tool?
Well, pretty good.
I think I talked too loud because I think everybody in the building has left. And so looking back here, so you go to USPS.com, click on business, every door direct mail, type in the zip code, find the route that you're interested in. Obviously design a mailer, right? So that can be with Canva, it can be what Command can do that. I'll show you guys some examples. I think I can pull it up. I have printed examples I can bring to the office and show you, but I'm getting in there for 33 cents a door for shipping, and about 15 times a year for content. So about every 3 to 4 weeks. And I have a schedule I'll show you, but this is an example of one of our recent mailings. It literally came out 2 weeks ago. So January 14th, there's our new address, 2900 Canby Street. John is the owner. He's familiar with this process. So we mailed to 9,450 homes, a 6.5 by 9-inch postcard. 130 pounds is the thickness of the paper. It's glossy, both sides. And this will look expensive, right? You don't have to start this big, but I spent $21.80 on postage and $926 on printing, right? So it was $3,100 for that one mailer, but that works out to be 33 cents a house, right? The per house rate is what you want to pay attention to here, not the scale of it. So if I was Kim and mailing to 600 houses, it would be roughly $190 to do that. And if you ever get a listing, Kim, if one of your neighbors went to sell their house right now, what's it worth?
Well, my neighbor across the street just died and he's gonna be selling it, and I looked on, I kind of did some comps in the 500s.
So 500.
Well, it depends because my development has a little bit of everything, but I'd say they high 200s to mid 500s, depending on which side of the development and so on.
So at 2.5% commission, a $500,000 sale is worth 12.5. At 3%, it's worth 15,000. So somewhere between 12,500 and 15,000. If I'm Kim and I'm mailing to 600 homes at 33 cents a piece, $198 a mailing. If I do that 15 times a year, $3,000 a year in mailings, I'd be shocked if you didn't get business from that. And if you get one sale from it, it's worth between 4 and 5 times what you spent, right? 4 times would be 12,000, 5 times would be 15,000. And there's also ancillary benefit, right? You could potentially get the buyer for that listing. You could have that person, obviously not in the deceased case, but they could be buying their next home with you, or they could be moving to Florida and be a referral opportunity, or it can give you social media content and you can do an open house at that listing, right? That could get you other buyers or sellers. So there's usually overflow effect of this, but regardless, if you do that 15 times in a year and just got one success, you're going to get a 4 to 5 time return on your money, which is what most marketing people say. If you get a 4-time return on your money, that's enough to build a real business off of, and you should scale indefinitely, because 4x is enough to make you a good return and run a business off of. So here are some examples of what we're sending, right? So the messaging obviously is important. There's people out there that say you shouldn't always talk about houses. I kind of agree, kind of disagree, right? Like, I mean, I still need to be known as a realtor. So I am showing them houses every time. At the same time, we will talk about community events occasionally, things like that. But the top left, selling your Palmyra home, right? It's just like 3 Polaroid images. This one points out that was sold for a record high in the neighborhood, right? So it gives us relevancy. Palmyra's top selling realtors, right? So we reinforce that. We reinforce our experience. Palmyra's #1 listing agent since 2018. Some of you may not have that message to convey, but you could as well, right? Like, so if I'm brand new, maybe I can find a way to manipulate the data, right? And I say Keller Williams is the #1 in the marketplace, or I use the stat from last week that we're the #1 brokerage in all of central Pennsylvania, right? I can tweak that, and maybe I say Team Becker, part of the #1 brokerage in central Pennsylvania, right? Make a messaging that's almost as impactful with accurate information. You know, this middle one was about a specific listing, selling in Hershey. Contact us today. It provides a value proposition for my seller, but most likely I'm not going to sell the house off that postcard. It just gives me local relevancy to send to the Hershey market, right? But this was after the fact. It said under contract, 5 offers, 20,000 over list price. So if somebody else wants a similar outcome, they may call me because they saw we had success with their neighbor's house. There's a Rockledge mailer. There's just another generic little Polaroid one. I do different sizes. The 3 at the top are 6.5 by 9. This one here in the bottom corner is 4.5 by 12. I try to mix it up so that they're not numb to what's coming in their mailbox. It comes in different shapes and sizes. You can, believe it or not, go the whole way up to like 11 by 15 or 12 by 15 with EDDM, and they don't charge you more or less for the size of the card. The printing cost may vary a little bit, not as much as you think. But I did the biggest size one time, and it had a lot of people complain because it was too big and it got stuck in their mailboxes and things. This one here was around a specific $1.3 million listing. So I did that as a value prop for the seller, plus just to try to get credibility with the neighborhood. And then this is the back, right? It looks busy, but this is the back where we tell them more about us, right? So both sides have the contact information. Both sides have like credibility statements. If you've attended Gene Rivers, he says everything you ever send should have 2 things on it, a QR code to scan to figure out what your home's currently worth, and then another one to search available homes. So we have that. And then these other statements just talk about our experience. We sold 800 homes in 10 years. More buyers use Team Becker to buy their home than anybody else in Palmyra. More sellers, same thing. We have a proven history to get your home sold quicker and for more money. And then we sell the most Palmyra homes, and we live locally. That's important for some people. And then just some tidbits there. Sell your home for more money, faster, and we have more reviews than anybody else locally. So that's kind of the content. Now, the one thing I would say here, when I hear people like Kim and Ruth and Justin talk about their listings, and Justin tells me he doesn't even have a listing presentation. I'm sure he does now, but he used to not have one. That's because you guys are selling directly to your sphere, like your bowling league friends, your neighbors, your past clients, your high school friends, things like that. What we do find is we have competition almost every time that we interview for a listing, right? It's because they're calling that person, like Kim, Justin, Ruth, and they're also calling us because we marketed our way into their mailbox. And sometimes we come in the door with a disadvantage, and sometimes we come in the door with an advantage. Sometimes they kind of know they're going to use us because but almost every time they say, hey, just so you know, we're talking to 2 or 3 realtors. Sometimes they say 4 or 5 because people have more time on their hands. They're working from home or not working from home ever since COVID. So we do have competition more often, which makes it where we have to have a very robust listing presentation. Sometimes we cut deals to get the listings and so forth. And we lose a lot, right? So we had took 60 listings last year, probably had 85 or 90 listing appointments, right? So we lose a third of the time, and it hurts. You wasted the time. For me, it's more about the competitiveness than the money at this point. Like, I just don't want to lose. So I go in there with more energy and more determination. I would love to know what the other person says, right? Because I want to beat them. I think I have the sales background, the marketing background to beat them, and I don't always do it. But sometimes I think we're just a second opinion to see what these guys think the home is worth, because we're going to go with our cousin Susie no matter what. So just be prepared for that, that when strangers call you, they're more critical because you don't mean anything to them. You're not coming with their best friend or their family member's recommendation. So it's a different level of a lead. Chris, what are your thoughts?
I have a question. David.
Yeah, go ahead, Kim.
Well, like, I really, really do want to farm my neighborhood, but just those postcards, that like overwhelmed me, like thinking about every time you mail a card, having to come up with content. Do you hire a marketing person to create your postcards, or are you creating them yourself?
I am not. I generally generate the concept, but I've used, since the day we started, we use a guy in Serbia to do our marketing for us. And at this point, 10 years in the making, he knows with very little information. I'll be like, hey, man, can you refresh this mailer to make it look like today's content with this house instead of this one? Like, I literally give him 1 or 2 sentences, and the next morning I wake up to a draft that almost always I go with, because he knows me that well. And I pay him roughly $25 or $35, depending on how much work was in the card to design it. But they look better than I could do. He's got the branding elements down. He's got all my logos and colors and things like that now. But I would say when there's a totally new idea, I give him the idea. I'll say, hey, let's make one that looks like this. It has Polaroids or whatever, but then he makes it look good. And sometimes we go back and forth on a whole new concept, but once we kind of iron in on something that works, we stick with it. And sometimes I'm just not creative, right? Like I am out of ideas. So like I'll just pull up an old mailer and say, hey, let's bring this one back from 2019 and just make it look like today's messaging, right? Like our fonts change, our colors have changed, things like that. And he'll be like, because people have gotten 150 of these mailers over 10 years, but they don't remember what they got. Like, as long as, and sometimes I send the same one 2 weeks in a row or two mailings in a row because I like it, or it worked well or something like that. So it's more about the regular touch and feeling local and as a resource than it is about the content. But yeah, I would recommend that almost all of us have somebody help us with it. Maybe some of these youngsters like Stephanie or whatever can do it on their own, but it's not a good return on the investment. But Chris, would you agree with what I said about like when you have a sphere lead that like somebody that you did business with referred you, it's much different than somebody that you door knocked?
Yeah, for sure. I've been fortunate to kind of have experience on like both ends of that coin, both sides of that coin, where the majority of my business now comes from, Sphere, past client referrals. I do a lot of listing business through that. But, I've also went out and prospected for sale by owner. It's canceled, expired, come sell me calls, from a sign in the yard, stuff like that. David's point's really good because with the presentation piece of it, I have found that, earlier in my career, I would be more hyper focused on making sure that my presentation was spotless for somebody that didn't know, because I wasn't going in with that relationship. And I would bring some stuff on my SOI listing appointments. But as I've continued to kind of grow and develop my listing appointment, I think the key with a listing appointment, the presentation piece, is it's always going to change, right? It's not set in stone and that's what it is for 5 years and you just roll with it. But what I have found by hosting my listing appointments the same way, regardless of the source of business, whether it's a sphere of influence that I go in there and I know for sure I'm getting it. And David, I'm sure you can speak to this too. Like, we know, to your point of like, sometimes I feel like they're getting me in there for a second opinion on pricing, and maybe I'm not first place. And typically you can kind of read that and you can ask more, qualifying questions to try to overcome those hurdles. But when I go in with my listing appointment catered the same way, now it's going to be different based off the property needs, but I've found it much easier now to go on the FSBO appointments and to go on the expired appointments and to go on listing, like the cold appointments, because I'm not training myself 2 different ways to host my listing appointment. I'm going in with a listing appointment that I'm confident in, comfortable with presenting. And for the SOI people, it's a slam dunk. But now what I feel like is we all like to work with people we know, right? We love those SOI calls, those past client calls. That's a good feeling, getting a car, driving to the listing appointment. So like our energy might naturally be higher for those appointments. Then, oh, here goes another FSBO appointment. But if you keep your presentation universal and the same for both appointments, what will end up happening, I found, is that the excitement that you get from going on those SOI appointments and those referral appointments naturally carries into your FSBO appointments and your expired appointments, where you don't feel like, oh, pressure on, I got a FSBO listing. It just feels like a listing. So I think that's some good stuff in there.
Terry, could you, if we have one, could you grab a listing presentation and pass it around?
Yep.
So I'll show you. So I spend about $31 per listing presentation. It's like a hardbound book that we use. And this came from like when I was in Michigan, I stole the idea from them, because if you think about it, that listing appointment's worth $10,000 or $15,000, right? I want to go in there and blow them away with the materials that I'm giving them. So if I do 80 or 90 in a year, right, I'm going to spend $2,700 on listing presentations, but that's to get 60 listings and gross, $500,000. So it's worth it. We've had people chase us out into the driveway and say, you left this here. And I'll tell them, oh, we actually meant to leave it there. That's for you to keep. And they're like, it's like we just gave them a present. They can't believe that we're leaving this behind. So that's a value add, because they see that will probably transfer into the rest of the quality of our marketing and the effort that we make, versus the other listing agent that came in with stuff stapled together like Chris Rabb with coffee stains on it. So, yeah.
Out of curiosity, how much pre-listing appointment marketing and material do you set your sellers up ahead of the listing appointment? Like, I know there's 2 different perspectives on this. Like, just show up with your material and rock it out. And I also know there's top performing agents that are like, I'm doing a video and I'm emailing it to the seller before I go into the listing appointment, so I'm not so cold in. Like, are you guys doing any of that build up before the listing appointment?
No, but I thought about it. Obviously, in Jeff's area with a courier service and stuff is a little bit easier when you're in the city. But yeah, I'd like to. We could do something like that, like a hybrid through BombBomb. I think it does 2 things where or several things actually, where it'll give them a glimpse of who you are and your personality right ahead of time. You'll be able to set expectation on what happens in the appointment. It'll allow you to control the pulse of the appointment, where you can say, hey, well, I expect for us to spend about 45 minutes to an hour together. When I get there, we'll shake hands, get to know each other for a minute. Then I'll take a quick tour of your home. Then we'll sit at your kitchen or dining room table and go through the listing presentation. Then if you like what you hear and you believe I'm the best agent to sell your house, we'll have the paperwork ready to get started. At the same time, you could attach like the disclosure for that. That's what Jeff does. And when he shows up and they already have the disclosure filled out, it's a key sign that they're probably going to go with you. So it allows you to do multiple things that way. I'm actually going to take that down, because that's something I want to do. I got to figure out what version of it I want to do. But we want to have people. I think if you did that well, you could actually keep them in some instances from calling the other agents, right? If we're the first one to get called, then they could be like, oh my gosh, this guy is so impressive that why don't we just see what he says before we call other people. So I do want to improve on that, but Aaron does a better job with that. Like, he sends bombs to his people and what to expect. And I got an email from Aaron yesterday, a database email, and it literally said something has changed with the energy or something like that in the subject. I thought he sent it just to me. I was like, yeah, he's probably right. I was like, Aaron's scolding me. And I was actually glad to see it went to his database, because I was like, oh man, Aaron's unhappy with me again. So This one just speaks to our growing farm. So in the beginning, we were doing this very manually. We were like, the cards were sent to my house from Canada. We sorted them with a postage scale. I put rubber bands on. I had address labels to mail to Rockledge and Old Stone Way were our first two neighborhoods. But then as we learned how to scale it, and I'm happy to share those secrets with you, we went from 600 homes to 2,000 to 9,000. And I had plans, and I've tried it from time to time to add like the next town over. What I'll tell you is either it's because of our relevancy, because we're not also ingrained in that community, or it's because I haven't been loose enough with the money. I haven't committed the same way as I have in Palmyra. It hasn't worked as well. But I'd like to use that to expand, into like Hummelstown or Elizabethtown or somewhere nearby that has good turnover. And then just looking at results, right? So, and we'll wrap this up in the next few minutes, but in Palmyra, when we first started, we did 2 listings. There was 290 that year in the marketplace. So we had 1% share of the listings. And then you can see there, we went to 8. So it doesn't seem like much, but we quadrupled from 2015 to 16. And then we tripled to 23 in 2017. And then our high water mark was just before COVID. We had 38 listings in Palmyra out of 316 has 12% market share, which is probably considered market domination, right? Nobody else at that point probably has more than half of what we have. And at that time, we were getting calls, and we had people. I would go to the grocery store in the morning, like with a white T-shirt on and slippers, and like everyone recognized me, and it was awkward and stuff. I looked like a homeless person, but so I had to start dressing differently. But people would say, "Oh my gosh, we see your signs everywhere. You guys must be like the only realtor in town." And it was not true, right? 38, there's still 270 houses that other people are selling, but they're seeing them in a very condensed geographic area, right? Where they're driving on their route home. They're seeing several signs on their journey home. But also our signs look different because Keller Williams allows you to brand yourself the way that you want to with regard to size, color, shape, whatever. They saw our signs and it resonated because it's a picture of Karen and I. Our first picture was literally from like a cruise ship or something. People would make fun of us because it looked like a prom photo because like her hand was on my like shoulder or chest or whatever. Asked Matt Heilig about that. They said we were making out in the photo, which wasn't true, but people remember it because it looked only like ours. Nobody else looked like it. When you see Iron Valley sign, they're all black and gold, and they have like a little thumbnail of the picture, if at all. Coldwell Bankers are all blue and white. So you're thinking about Coldwell Banker, and you may have the same thought saying, wow, Coldwell Banker has a stronghold here, but you're not saying it about the specific agent because you're not retaining that information. So I think that's one of our biggest agent propositions is that you can brand yourself within Keller Williams as long as you meet the requirements of the state with regard to phone number, disclosure and things like that. You can be any size, shape, color you want, and your sign can look like nobody else is in town. So that's that part there. The right part, the plan, is our mailing schedule. And this is a little fluid, but this shows up for 21 times a year, which I usually peel back a little bit and don't mail quite that much. But you can see we front load this around the busy season, right? The most listings happen from like March to September, right? So you want to be mailing aggressively ahead of that because if a listing hits the market on March 10th, the decision made was probably made in the 1 to 3 weeks prior to that. So in the very beginning of March or the end of February. So now is about the time we should be amping up our effort to get that exposure and regain that top of mind awareness. So the math last year, I spent $94,000 on mailers, right? And again, I'm not here saying that you should do that same thing, but this just shows the proof of the numbers, right? So 352,000 pieces of mail went out to 17,000 unique homes, and they got it about 18 times each. So our average commission was average sale price was $371,000. Average commission rate was 2.8%. So our average check was $10,400. So we would have paid for all 90,000 in 9 sales, and we got 42 sales from that effort, right? So we made that 4-time return on investment. So if I did that math, I brought in about 420,000, 430,000 in income off a spend of 94,000. don't dwell on the 94,000, right? You're not going to go out and mortgage your house to do this. You would start small and build your way up. But I would argue that the cost is irrelevant if you can generate that 4x return. I've commonly said if I needed to spend $20,000 to put a billboard on 322 saying I'm the top realtor in Hershey, and if that phone would ring and I would make 80,000 a month off the 20,000 spend, it wouldn't matter, right? Because it would be the path to significant financial success. So this little guy, what's his name from Big Bang Theory? That's not Sheldon. Who's that? Nobody knows.
Never got into that show.
Okay, so it sounds expensive.
I recognize him.
It sounds expensive, but my argument would be that the return on investment is there. Listings bring buyers, right? For every listing, Jeff Glover says you should get at least one other sale from it, whether it be a circle prospecting listing. You're saying, hey, I sold your neighbor's home. There was multiple offers. You should sell your home with me too. That would be a listing referral, or buyers by way of the open house or a sign call. Aaron's under contract right now with a buyer that called about our listing at 156 Sparrow. They called and said, see, you have this house listed, refer it to him. They're under contract, right? It's an investor that could yield other future sales as well. So listings bring buyers. Listings take less time. We talked about that. Probably 4 hours of total time with a listing versus 20 plus with a buyer. Listings are easier. And up until recently, at least, listings almost always sell. Based on the height of that, when I was in 2018, 19, 2020, 2021, you could leave that listing appointment saying, cha-ching, I just made $10,000 because it's only a matter of time until I get that house under contract. And then this is the media mail that Michael was talking about. This is a little bit different. In this case, you're going to send a specific list of homeowners, like Mike Evans lives at 110 Main Street, and you're going to mail to them. It has nothing to do with mailing routes. And the post office does give you a discount now because you're like a bulk customer. So this is the Rockledge example. We mailed a 506 homes. It costs $271 per mailing. It's not quite as cheap as the EDDM. I think that was back on a previous slide. I had the media mail is 65 cents a household instead of the 33 cents, but you can tailor it specific to people. And a prime example would that be if you want to invite people to your client event, or if you want to invite your whole bowling league, and they might live all over the place scattered about, right? You can't do every door direct mail to your friends and family, but you could do media mail to them. And this shows you the Rockledge example. The average sale price there is about $260. Average check is about $7,800. And sidebar on this, most of the time, NAR change has helped us. We're listing most of these listings at 3%, right? Because my listing presentation speaks to that. It says our fee to do all the marketing and everything we just talked about is 3%. I flip the page and say, now let's talk about the buyer's agent compensation. We recommend a payout of between 2 and 3% to the buyer's agent because that's what we're seeing as customary in the marketplace. So usually we land at 2.5 on the buy side, 3% on the listing, but this has allowed me to reinforce and actually see an increase in the listing commission and get the full 3% most of the time. So that's why you're seeing that there. So $7,800 on an average sale. If I mail 15 times a year, I'm going to spend $4,000 to mail to that neighborhood. $5,700 if I mail 21 times a year. There was 26 homes sold in that townhome community last year, which would be 52 sides, right? Every sale has a seller and a buyer. And then we're usually going to list 4 to 6 of them, and we'll get 1 to 2 buyers. So we'll get 5 to 8 sales from a neighborhood like that, and we'll gross $39,000 to $62,000 off of that investment of $4,000 to $5,000, right? So in that case, being hyper specific and talking to the neighborhood, about the trick or treat events, about the drama with the HOA, about the record high sale price. We're getting an 8 to 12 time return. It just takes more manpower. Like this is something that eventually I'd like Amy to help with, where we're mailing more of this and a little bit less of the every door direct mail, but we're speaking to the people that we're sending it to because it'll mean more and the touch is higher value and they should call more often. So that's probably a way that you would want to go after your friends and family and your sphere. But if you want to blanket a neighborhood, it would be the every door direct mail. This is the last slide, but this speaks to the compound effect. I touched on this a little bit more, but I want to give you 2 examples. So This left side, these 4 houses, this seller on the left was an every door direct mail from 2023 lead, right? So they called us 2-3 years ago to sell their house. We listed the home, and somebody else bought it. And they had an agent when they bought it, but they actually called us to list their home in Lebanon because they liked us better than their agent, right? So we got the list side of the first home. We got the list side of the buyer's home in Lebanon. We happened to double dip that sale. Somebody called off the sign, or actually it was an internet lead off the listing. Christina, who was on my team at the time, got that buyer. We sold them their house. I'm sorry, we sold them the listing, and then she listed their house, which was in the neighborhood next door. So we got $2.2 million of volume, which was $55,000 of GCI off of literally that one piece of mail, which in theory cost 33 cents to get to their mailbox. But it was the repetitive effort and the fact that we weren't mailing just that one house. We were mailing to thousands of homes. But you could argue that 33 cents turned into 55,000. Not really being honest with yourself, but the effort itself led into four sales and 55,000 of GCI. The right side, believe it or not, these 8 homes were a Zillow lead from 2019. The top left was a condo in Hummelstown. The daughter, the mom called off a Zillow lead. The daughter was coming to Hershey for her residency. She bought a townhouse. Mom lived in California. She got sick of staying in hotels or in the daughter's condo when she came and visited. So she bought the top right to be like a vacation home, basically in the same neighborhood. Then a couple years later, Kylie, the daughter, called us to sell the condo, and she bought the house here at the bottom. Mom decided to sell her house, build a 55 plus neighborhood. We double dipped the listing when Kylie sold hers. Linda, the mom, built this house nearby their new home in a 55 plus neighborhood. Kylie became our neighbor, bought our a listing in our neighborhood. And then we got a referral for Linda's home because she moved here full time now. We got a referral for her $1.2 million house in California, which was equivalent to a $300,000 sale at the 25% referral, right? So that one Zillow lead turned into $73,000 of GCI, right? So a lot of this stuff, you can't directly look at the cost of the thing and say whether it was worth it or not. You have to look at it over time and what's the compound effect of that. Just like Justin doing a bourbon night, or Matt Heiling for his clients, right, and spending $800 on the bourbon night. Well, maybe you got directly no business from that, but maybe it's what led that customer to staying in relationship with you and using you 3 years from now to buy or sell a home, or referring you to their family or friend when they need a realtor down the road. So you have to look at the bigger picture of things. I would argue that all of our business, everything that we've ever done, has come by way of either Every Door Direct Mail or Zillow, because that's been the top of the funnel catalyst for us. Even the open houses we did, they only came to us because we got the listing probably from the Every Door Direct Mail that allowed us to be the open house host, right? There's some borrowing you can do, like Chris Rad did an open house for us on Sunday. So it was our listing. He did the open house. He generated 2 buyer leads from that. But for us, the whole funnel started with Every Door Direct Mail and Zillow, and branched on from then to now even the 900 people in our sphere that hopefully will transact with us again. They all source back to one of those 2 sources. So what questions do you guys have? I know the room has dwindled. Anything related, unrelated? Christian, you're from Palmyra. Did you live in Palmyra?
Yep, 2 Ash Street.
After 2015?
After 2015. I moved there, oh God, like sophomore year of high school. So that'd be like, 2001 I moved to Palmyra.
Okay. Are you, so I guess before you met me, were you familiar with us through our Palmyra effort?
I don't think so. I mean, I don't know. I never really paid attention at that time in high school, to something like that.
Yeah,
But
I'll tell you.
I do know that some of the people I talk to now because of real estate, excuse me, they definitely know you.
I think Shane left, but he'll tell the story where Shane's an odd duck, but he goes to the filling station every morning, 7 days a week for breakfast, always. And when he first got his real estate license, they're like, well, what are you going to do with your real estate license? Like everyone's going to use that Becker team. because like they're like the only realtors in town. And he said like this older clientele at the filling station actually had that feeling where he had to kind of educate them. Well, no, anybody can sell Palmyra homes. Like it's not just them. So stuff like that is the byproduct of like the repetition over time. And I want to be clear that when you send a mailing out, it's not like you sit there and wait for the phone to ring, right? Like there's most of our mailers we send out and we don't get any business from that, but it's all goes into the overall effort, right? When the phone does ring and somebody says, hey, we need to downsize, we need to sell our house here and we're looking for like a condo or townhouse. Now you can say, oh my gosh, that's probably a $400,000 or $500,000 listing and probably a $300,000 buyer, right? That's probably 20 grand of money that just came through that phone call that'll pay for the next 6 mailers, right? So as long as I don't go over 6, I'm getting a return on my investment.
David, do you still do Zillow leads or don't you do them anymore?
I spend $500 a month right now on Zillow and kind of regret it when it comes on my credit card because we're not getting much out of it. But that's because right now the only available market share that we have is in Lebanon. I think it's in 17042. And Aaron's getting the leads and he lives in Middletown. And I can't blame him for not being excited to drive from Middletown to Lebanon to show houses, right? So he's a little bit more critical on how he qualifies them versus honestly, Shane, Yvonne, and the Caparnas are doing very well. Shane has like 4 under contract right now that he's written in the last like 3 weeks. Terry, back me up on that. I think. What's that? And they're all Zillow leads, and like 2 or 3 of them looked at one house and bought it. Like, so he's had really recent good success with it. One of them, he was telling me, looked at a house and didn't get it. They wrote an offer on it, didn't get it. And then they called him and said, hey, we were thinking about building a house anyhow. We don't want to go through this and have to write offers and get rejection. Let's just go build a house at the neighborhood next door. And he went with them and signed them up for new construction. So, I guess if you have that mindset and you have that bandwidth to say, hey, I don't have kids in sports and I'm a little bit more loose with my nights and weekends where I can go out and show a house right away. There's a lot of opportunity there. I think most of Yvonne's business comes from Zillow. Now she went to Hershey. She worked at the Hotel Hershey for 37 years or something. So she does know people as well. So that helps. But yeah, I don't want to at this point raise my hand and volunteer for buyer leads just because I'm busy. I have a lot going on, and especially in the wintertime. I mean, sometimes I want to go home and just watch Netflix.
David, I have a question.
Hey, David, I put some questions in the chat.
Oh, hi, Wanda. All right, let's take a look at them. I'm a bad chat person.
That's okay.
How did you find the marketing person? So back then, I think it was on a website called freelancer.com. Today, there's freelancer.com and there's fiverr.com. I think Fiverr. Fiverr is known for like a lot of people have like $5 gigs that they'll do for you. And I would say, I think I got lucky and I think he literally was the first person, but you can go out there and you can look for people. Like you can filter it down by their credentials. Like I want somebody that's good with Adobe Photoshop and all that stuff and find somebody. If you have actual interest, I could talk to my guy and see if he has the bandwidth to take you on, because he's already familiar with real estate and Pennsylvania law and obviously been critical to my success. But I'll tell you that when Matt Heilig designed his logo for the Heilig group or Heilig team, whatever it says, I talked him into doing what's called a contest on Freelancer, and you'd be just shocked at what happens. Like, so you go and you post a contest, you're like, I need a new logo for my real estate team, and you put a prize behind it, like $30. And you put that contest out there, and hundreds, like I think he had like 600 entries of freelancers submitting what they wanted to be the winning logo, and they're competing to win that $30, like to the point where you don't want to do much more than that because you'll get just overwhelmed. My sister did $100. I was like, oh my God, are you nuts? Because she had thousands of entries to the point where you can't look through them because it's too much money. But then if they win, they get that $30, but they also get like more stars in their rating and stuff, which helps them in other ways. But that's been a unique way to do like logo design and stuff. But Wanda, feel free to, next time you're in, or if you want to call me sometime offline, I can talk to you about that. What do you use most to do marketing to past customers? So they get newsletters from me when I'm sending newsletters. Right now, we don't have somebody to help with that. It takes a lot of time to build a newsletter. There's like probably 4 hours of thought and content that goes into a newsletter. And I just haven't prioritized that. But mostly what they're getting is invites to our events, right? So in the past, Karen and I made the mistake of just emailing them and mailing them like, hey, we'd like to invite you to our Philadelphia Eagles happy hour or our pie giveaway or our client appreciation gala. Now that Aaron is willing to make the calls, he's backing that mailing or the email up with a phone call, right? And a lot of people will tell you that the touch point is what matters there. Even if they can't come, they feel value in the fact that you called them, and it gives you a subject for that phone call. You're not just calling to say, hey, you bought a house with us 4 years ago. Do you have anybody that you want to send to us as a referral? You're calling them literally to invite them to the event. And hey, by the way, do you still love your house at 110 Main Street? Do you know anybody's looking to buy or sell? It's a different warm touch. We get about, I think we had 90 people at our pie pickup this year. So for those 90 people, hopefully they'll never deviate. They'll keep using us. They're recommitting to us by coming to us. And I spent Terry, close to $2,600 on pies, I think, because I get pies from a high-end bakery. And I called Dave Hook, who I was coaching with, and I said, Dave, at what point should I cap this? I could be spending like $5,000 in pies. And he said, at no point should you cap that. He said, if somebody's willing to stop what they're doing, RSVP to your pie invitation, drive 2 days before Thanksgiving to meet you at your office, park their car, get out of your car, come in and interact with you to pick up a $20 pie, you should give it out to anybody that wants to do that, because you can't get a higher value touch than someone giving their time on a Tuesday evening to spend with you to get that pie. I used to do bulk mailing years ago, and you have to have a minimum number of pieces. So with media mail, there is a minimum. I don't know what it is. It's not that high. I want to say maybe 200. With the every door direct mail, the minimum is precipitated by the mailing route, right? So they're generally about 550 to 700 houses on a mailing route. Less if it's a walking mailman, because they can't accomplish as much in a day. But the every door direct mail route is going to determine the minimum that you send versus your list if you do the media mail. Now, I know bulk rate is kind of going to the wayside. Bulk rate, if you talk to the Postal Service, they don't have a time commitment on when bulk mail is delivered. They can deprioritize that. Don't quote me on this, but it's not near as guaranteed. First class, they're going to make every effort to deliver that as fast as possible. And media mail and every door direct mail is in the mailbox less than 3 days after I give it to the printer, where there can be some problems with bulk rate. I've heard of people, mailman, that just throw it in the trash and it never gets delivered and stuff too. But I don't want to go on record saying that. But does that answer your questions at least somewhat, Wanda?
Yes, yes. My biggest thing was when you're doing that every door direct mail, is it coming right from the printer to the post office, or do you have to go get it and deliver it to the post office?
Yep, I never touched it. I used to, and it was a pain. I mean, I would get paper cuts. I had to buy cardboard boxes, rubber bands, paper in bulk. I had to buy a postage scale. I literally counted them and said 100 here, 100 here, and it took forever. We would get, sometimes days would go by before we got them to the post office because we just didn't have the time or to do it. I had a full-blown mail distribution center in my house, and then I got a little smarter with it and said, okay, if this stack is 100 and it weighs 21.2 ounces, then every stack that weighs 21.2 ounces would be 100. And I got faster. But then I found, actually, Chris Hadley brought Get It Now to me, and he's barely more expensive than I could do it by myself, and I never touch it. I'm on the mailing route that I mail to, so I get the mail, so I know when it hits the mailboxes. And if you do media mail, I would always encourage you to put yourself on the list so you know when it went out and you have proof that it did go out. But yeah, now, Wanda, unfortunately, my printer is not going to mail stuff to Berks County, but I would use that example to say, hey, call your local printers and say, hey, an agent I work with in Harrisburg, they do this for him for about 33 cents a piece, where he emails them the list and the art, and they print it and drop it off the post office. And I think it's commonplace, maybe not every printer, but one of them in Berks County will do that for you. You just have to price shop and see who's competitive with it.
Okay.
Kim, did you have a question earlier? or somebody in the room?
Yeah. Well,
Okay.
when you, I mean, it was back to my original question, which you kind of answered, but kind of didn't. Like when you first started doing these mailings, did you create the content or did the guy that you're using create it? I don't want
I
to have
ne-
to come up with content to put on these postcards. Like that's
I, I,
not
ne-
my
I never
wheelhouse.
created. I never created it because mine wouldn't look as good and wouldn't look as professional as I wanted it to be. I'm trying to find.
But he did
I
it the
have,
whole time.
yeah, he's done it since the very beginning. So, and like just like your listing presentation, right? In theory, you could have made that yourself, but you paid somebody to do it because it didn't cause you the stress, and
Right.
it looks better than you or I could ever do. And then eventually, if you use that same person, you kind of develop a theme and a brand out of it. Um, I have um, I have a presentation somewhere that I have most, if not all, of my past mailers, which I mean, we don't cross paths, Kim. Like I could give you some of these for inspiration, but like I would say that you don't need new content all the time. Like this is over the years, there's 63 slides here, 60 slides of different mailers that I've done, and you'll see how the look changed over time. Like as
I
as
could just
corporate
copy
America,
yours, but put my picture and then houses in my area.
this is 2019, right? So now if you use my guy, it's probably going to automatically look a lot similar to mine because
Yeah.
he's, but this is 6 years ago, right? That's what we did. And then in the meantime, obviously our brokerage, we changed names, we changed phone numbers, we changed font size, just like corporate America kind of evolves. Our look evolved, just like here, a hot market. I want to talk about it being a seller's market. When it's a seller's market, obviously the messaging has to change a little bit when it's not. Stuff like this tends to work better when you're giving them like real information, like here, listings are down 26%, contracts are up 17%, average sale price is up 12%. They can see dollar signs with that and like, hey, now might be a good time to sell. But this is a glimpse of most of what we've done over the last 10 years. Stuff like this, works well. Not that I don't even have addresses, right? But it just shows that we're selling a lot of houses, and maybe you should call us if you don't know who else to call.
David,
Obviously,
on Kim's question, it's important too, I think, to note all the different legalities of the font sizes with KW, and your name has to be smaller, and you just can't go into Canva and print this gorgeous picture and advertise however you want, right? Is that correct, Shane?
yeah, the two main rules are if you use your own phone number, the brokerage phone number has to be there and be equal or larger size. There'd be no reason to make the brokerage phone number bigger, so just make them equal, right? Then you have no problem. So if this is size 14 font, then this should be size 14 font. The same rule goes for your name. Like Kim Hibner has to be equal size or smaller than Keller Williams, right? So those are really the two rules. Now, other stuff that can get you in trouble is like advertising somebody else's listings because of right to use the photos. You should have permission for that type of thing. But you can do one of two things. If you use my guy, he knows the rules. If you don't, on Explore KW, there's a spot to upload your advertisement, whether it be a sign, a business card, a mailing, whatever, that goes to Scott, and he'll provide approval or feedback on you from a broker's perspective. I like this look, right? I actually might bring this one back now because I'm a little out of ideas, but right here, whether it's the exact message or not, two different neighborhoods, same realtors, same results. Every home listed by Team Becker in 2027 has sold. Two examples. It's not luck experience. I like the black and the gold, but on this right side, it's credibility statement, right? So now we can say, now we're number one 8 years in a row. We can say 261 5-star Google reviews, stuff like that. What's different about you? If I were to call you and do business, why are you better than my neighbor? I have to go here in a minute. I got a 1:00, but and I know we took way too much time. Sorry about the internet trouble. But Amy, can I ask the same question of you as a local Palmyra resident? Before you even got into real estate, did you have a feel for Karen and I in your marketplace?
Absolutely, 100%. I have a stack of your flyers, and it actually, believe it or not, I'm here. Like, this is a dream come true of mine because I've always wanted to be like inside your mind, figure out what I don't understand. And then I joined another team. And I'm like, And I just reach out to you guys first. So, yes, you have a very dominant presence in Palmyra.
Don't tell Michael you want to be inside my mind, or Karen. It's a very dark and scary place. There's a lot going on inside there. But a funny story, Amy called Karen when I was in Arizona for the Jeff Glover conference just 3 weeks ago and said, I'm interested in this job you have on Indeed. And I called her back from Arizona, and then we got together shortly thereafter. So that just shows how things can change very quickly. Like 3 weeks ago, when Terry was moving on to the market center position, I didn't know what we're going to do, and then all of a sudden, Amy fell in her lap. And same thing with listings, right? You go from being slow, and even selling what we do. Like I get moody, and I get desperate, and I get scared of where business is going to come from. Like, oh my gosh, our funnel is dry. I was talking to Kim about this the other day, where as we get to the settlement table, I'm like, oh my gosh, we got those closed, but now we don't have any new sales that we're working on. What are we going to do? And that can change with one phone call, right? Where I've already been like, we're back. You get a phone call and you're like, that's a listing, and it's a hot listing. It's going to sell, and they're motivated to sell it quickly. So now we're re-energized, and that can happen very quickly just with the next phone call, but it generally isn't going to happen just because you're a realtor. It's going to be because of your social media content or your mailings or your communication with your database. We got to just stay out there because there's 2,000 realtors in the greater Harrisburg area. Everybody knows somebody that has a real estate license. We have to make ourselves stand out versus that person. So, and Josh Shope, when I started, Josh Shope and I saw each other as the other one's biggest competition because he owned the Palmyra market, and I wanted to take Josh Shope down, and he wanted me to go away and not exist on this planet, right? Like we were main competition, and him and I are friends now. And we talked 2 weeks ago, and I said, the funny thing is, I can't remember the last time we did a deal together. I think it was 2 years ago, or the last time we were up against each other in a listing appointment. And we were joking that we're not each other's competition anymore. Our competition is the sum of all the new agents, right? Like the cousins, the sisters, the part-timers, the PC people. Like, so we commonly lose listings into, even in Palmyra, to people that feel that they have a close relationship with somebody else. Gene Rivers says that people are going to do business with you if you're closest in proximity to them, like I work with them, I'm their neighbor, they've used me before, or you're closest in relationship, right? Without those two things, you don't seem different than the other person. I'll probably go with my best friend's sister as my realtor, even though she's new, because I think she's going to watch out for me because I don't have a closer relationship with somebody else. But anything else? Got a couple minutes?
Nope, that was good, David.
Who's in the room there besides, is that Steph? Wait, Kim, Christian,
You
who's in the
lost a
middle?
couple people.
Who's in the
I'm
middle?
new here. I was here a little late. I'm Jalen. I'm a new agent.
Oh, hi, nice to meet you. I'm David.
Hello.
So I had the flu yesterday, so I'm trying to save everybody from getting sick. So I'm usually in the office right there with you, but thanks for joining today.
Thank you.
All right, thanks, Kevin.
Thank you for taking time.
Oh, you got it. Thanks for joining. Appreciate it. We'll talk to you guys all soon.
Okay,
All
bye-bye.
right, and Trixie, I would be interested in talking with your guy if he's interested in taking on some more people.
Okay, I'm
Yeah,
gonna put a
me
note.
too,
Can I call you
David.
tomorrow?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, see you, Wanda.
All right, bye-bye.